Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is all going to be about retirement goals, talking about the future of the market, and kind of just where I currently sit because I want to get a little bit into things that I'm just interested in beyond what I do for work. Because what I do for work is largely stock market and social media related, but that is not my retirement dream. Damn it. I don't think anybody wants to sit here and listen to a clown on the internet forever. And I mean, the content output that is going to be drowning my voice is going to become exponential in the coming years. In fact, one of my dreams, ironically, that I do not discuss on this channel was to get a damn cat and turn it into a famous feline on TikTok so I could monetize it and live this kind of, pet euphoria dream. I'm sure this is one of my favorite cats. His name is Ben. If you don't know him, he's the Hunt cat.
Huh?
I wish I was joking.
Huh?
But I fell in love with this cat and some of these cat memes that have really taken off in the last year. I grew up on a farm. I grew up with pets, and I recently took my fiance to see the dog that my mom ended up getting rid of when she retired. So I don't have any pets in my life, and I grew up having dozens of cats, dozens of dogs, all this stuff. Never tried to make videos out of them, but now I have this like new affection toward these animals that have become super viral on TikTok. But my dreams are getting crushed because I'm like, in 3 years, I told my mom my retirement goal, I'm going to get a cat. I'm going to make it famous, build my portfolio up, and then this is what I'm going to do for fun. And then anyways, I've realized very quickly that even dreams like that are going to get absolutely destroyed thanks to AI. I mean, we've all seen these videos, right? Like eventually I'm just going to be able to crap in all these different cat and dog videos, and I'm just going to be able to, make as much content as I humanly want through so many different vectors of AI that in 3 to 5 years from now, my dream of owning a cat's going to be pointless. Like for the purposes of making videos anyways, maybe just to have an affectionate pet at best. But that was like one of my joke kind of goals here for retirement. And I'm going to refine this conversation down to why I labeled this video as I need 338,000 or something like that. And I'm going to break down why that number is very specific here and kind of what I want to do moving forward. But first and foremost, I want to roll back to a little bit of a conversation that I just kind of came across that really resonated with me because like I've been having that existential crisis that like anybody that's paying attention to what's going on understands that like this technological jump that's happening is only really going to happen once. And it has never happened, as we've done in these streams, talking about like the 1,000 years that Egypt was around for and they evolved, but nothing to the extent that has happened in the last 150 years. And whether that was from, the starts of electricity or God knows what sparked this in human nature, we are headed on a path right now that's going to happen in the next 50 years that is going to be, needless to say, like dystopian at best. But I think Elon Musk, he just had this little anecdotal point that kind of just, it really rocked my core. But just listen to this.
Well, the plus side of AI is that I think productivity will increase dramatically. So across every field, whether it be manual labor to supply chain logistics, there's already a lot of movement to use chatbots, like sophisticated chatbots for customer service, for example, where they can answer quite complex questions already. But I think we really are on the edge of probably the biggest technology revolution that has ever existed. There's supposedly a sort of a Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, we live in the most interesting of times, the most interesting. And for a while there, it was making me a bit depressed, frankly, because I was like, well, will they take over? Will we be useless? But then the way that I reconciled myself to this question was, would I rather be alive to see the AI apocalypse or not? I'm like, I guess I'd like to see it.
So that's really what it boils down to, right? Like we know we're heading into a place very shortly where like here's what I think is going to happen. We're going to see like a massive output of any digital based business in the next 1 to 3 years. We're already doing it in my business. Like our capabilities of output through AI media is literally almost jaw dropping. I'm seeing these tools being used on TikTok already. Most people don't even realize a lot of the videos that they're likely watching are AI related. Like they're just AI generated. So the output of content, the output of everything from like accounting to lawyers to God knows what is just going to like 10x in the next 3 to 5 years, in my opinion, because the capability is just going to be absolutely insane. Now, there's also some anecdotal stuff in here I can rush through, but maybe I can just kind of breeze through it just to give you an idea, because he does point out that what's happening to right now in like basically generative AI, like compute power is like 10xing every 3 years. Like it's going at a level that has never happened even in the last 5 years. And it's just happening so crazy. And I mean, we're seeing it in NVIDIA, right? Like it's just getting absolutely staggering. So I think we're going to get in this exponential curve of where it's going to be cool to see the output of people's, jobs, everything from healthcare to whatever. But then we're going to reach this crossing point where all of a sudden, like you being there is going to be pointless. And I'm talking about farming. I'm talking about like over the next 50 years, every industry, self-driving, all these things are just going to get absolutely decimated from like a personal work standpoint. And that's when capitalism comes into play. So sitting in this kind of existential crisis, I don't know where you're at in your life, but I do not want to be like dealing with the stress of where this takes me in my job trying to get to retirement. So I have this very fixated goal where in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years, I really desperately need to come up with about $338,000. That is going to resolve almost all of my retirement issues, and I'll break down why that is. But before we do, I still want to offer a few more anecdotal interesting pieces of advice here that I find really interesting depending on what economies you're looking at. Like the Canadian economy, for example, I find very interesting because of the lack of innovation. When I look at what moves stocks in like the major sectors here, it's for really unusual reasons, because a lot of people are pointing out like big bump in C&Q this week because they did end up posting some earnings, and the stock just over the last 5 years has just been absolutely parabolic for a few insane reasons, like again the natural gas, crazy billion-dollar facilities Canada's building, all kinds of stuff. And I think these need-based companies are going to be very like, we're obviously going to use them no matter what. Like, I mean, we're going to use oil for probably the rest of my life. We're going to be using, the banks and some of these infrastructure companies that are need-based, but these need-based companies typically don't grow this fast, right? So C&Q has been exploding, even though on a year-over-year basis, it's not like their net earnings have actually grown at all, but they've kind of figured out a little bit of a hack, right? Like they've come to this conclusion where like, if we just increase the dividend and really focus on shareholder return through that aspect, that we're likely going to attract a lot of Canadian investors, because you can see their earnings for the year end from 2022 to 2023 is basically just null and void. Like nothing has really happened, but they have been increasing the dividend at a pace that has been unprecedented for the entirety of their history, right? I mean, you go back to 2022 and you've gone from like basically 47 cents to over doubling within just a handful of years. Whereas you go back to any time in their history and the dividend growth has never been anywhere near that. So you kind of come to recognize that these Canadian companies that have real explosive growth behind them, they seem to be raising their dividends a heck of a lot. Whereas if we actually look at the dominating country and companies on a global scale that have reached these absolutely absurd. I remember when Apple hit $1 trillion market cap and people were like, oh my God, how do we get any bigger than this? And then Apple like surpassed 3 trillion. I was like, holy crap, you could have 3x your money buying $1 trillion company. But if you take a look at this, what I find most interesting is the fact that it's so tech-based, right? You can hear sirens outside. I don't know. Hopefully nothing crazy going on out there, but Jesus, it's so loud. But if you take a look at this, what I find most interesting of these tech companies, right? I mean, you're seeing the chip sector absolutely explode for just reasons, but the tech companies is what I think is the most intriguing, because for the first time in I think the entire history of the S&P 500, tech companies are now dominating the entire top 10. For a long time, ExxonMobil would float in and out, JP Morgan, but anything that now is basically a traditional based company like you'd see in Canada, like these oil companies, these banks, these traditional brick and mortar, foundational companies like Coca-Cola, things you need, your Procter and Gamble's of the world, they are kind of drifting away. Like they're going to be here, but they're not as impactful as this major jump that's going on, and you're seeing it by these market caps, right? Like, I mean, Berkshire Hathaway is now the only kind of traditional company that sits in the S&P top 10, but that's only because if it wasn't for the investment, the massive amount of money they put in Apple stock, they wouldn't even be here. Like they wouldn't be in the S&P top 10 if it wasn't for that Apple investment. That is what the saving grace of Berkshire Hathaway has pretty much been at this point. So we can start to recognize this massive, insane just shift that is happening. And again, a lot of people are starting to complain saying Apple's had its day. They're burning out. But the fact of the matter is these companies have more money than anybody could possibly imagine. These are the new kind of traditional stocks over your traditional oil or Procter & Gamble's of the world. And though the growth might even be stagnating, they still have more money and they're going to have more income than any of these other companies because of these technological jumps that have happened that are still going on, right? Even take a look in 2014, what the S&P 500 looked like. And this is kind of like it still blows my mind a little bit because you got ExxonMobil as the second largest company. You had Berkshire still in here, Johnson & Johnson Healthcare, Walmart, Chevron, Wells Fargo, Procter & Gamble, General Electric, JP Morgan, IBM, Pfizer, Amazon was just coming up, Coca-Cola, right? But if you go all the way back to 1994, 10 years before, and you pretty much see most of the same companies. Like you see your Coca-Colas and your Walmarts, your Procter & Gamble, General Electric, Johnson & Johnson was still a top 10. Even go back to 1990. There's your General Electric. There's your Walmart. There's your Coca-Cola. So basically for almost 30 years, I mean, you could have damn well just held the same traditional foundational stocks that were sitting in the S&P top 10, and you would have made a damn killing. On Coca-Cola, Johnson, like just foundationally boring companies, but we are no longer in that world. Like that world in the last 10 years, and especially in the last 5 years, has changed so dramatically that it's almost just jaw-dropping, which is why I think there's such prevalence to owning the S&P 500 and these kind of passively weighted ETFs these days. Because, I mean, if Berkshire just missed Apple as an investment, like their stock would look dramatically different today, right? So all this kind of just boils down to the fact that, like, you know, I want to get to a place of early financial independence. And I think it's so crucial today to be focused on this than ever before because of how disruptive things are going to be in your job place. I think if you go to school today for a 4-year degree in programming and video editing and just damn near anything that's digitally based, you're pointless. You will be irrelevant by the time you finish your degree. And if school is not educating you on the tools, which are changing every year, I mean, I don't even know how you keep up with this changing world, right? It's so damn hard that if I was 19 today, my only focus would be on what is the most stable sector that exists today, or what is the sector where I can make the most amount of money the quickest. And honestly, you can get that out of the trades today. I mean, even in my business, it's still going to be relevant, hopefully for the next 3 years, probably be relevant for a bit longer. I'm crossing my fingers here, but it really just boils down to the investments that I'm looking at and what I'm trying to do in my own career. And I've kind of worked this down. And this is something that I try and, you know, tell everybody to use is just sit down with a compound calculator and figure out where you're at, what your goals are, and where you need to be, right? So I've just been throwing like random numbers in here for fun. I'm going to zero these out just so we can talk about some stuff here because I don't think most people have a plan, right? And having a plan in a market environment like this is going to change your outcome dramatically. From my age of 23, I made a plan to be where I wanted to be in about 10 years. And I'm shocked at how well that has worked to my favor. Just by making a few incremental changes in where my income was going at the age of 23 has got me to a place now where we've almost got a paid for piece of real estate. You know, we've got a decent sized starting portfolio here. Still got a ways to go, but I need to get to a place where, like, I don't care about quitting my job. I don't care if my wife wants to quit tomorrow. Like, that's the position I want to be in sooner rather than later. And because I'm in this position now where between me and my fiance, we're making, you know, 150 to 200,000 a year combined, like we have a really, really good thing to figure this out in the next 3 years, just because my fiance is in graphic design. Like she recognizes, you know, what's coming when it comes to her job and obviously my job. Like, I mean, again, we're using AI tools now. Luckily, I'm the user of it. But eventually, I don't think, you know, I don't need real skill. I don't think anyone needs real skills to do the job that I'm doing, right? So, I mean, it's going to very rapidly change. How do you value an employee at that point, right? Like, I mean, if an employee went to get a degree in something that took 4 or 5 years, but now all of a sudden, you know, somebody within 10 minutes of learning a program can do your job, I mean, it's really horrifying to think about that reality that's coming, right? So basically where we sit today is like, I need to get my piece of real estate paid off. Like we need to do that like soon, get that out of the way because that is a huge expense in the current market environment. I don't know how long this is going to take, but when I boiled all the numbers down, I need to get around $338,000. And that would basically suffice and give us a base net of passive income that would cover all of our expenses. Now, not 338,000 as a total. I mean, obviously that's just what I need to make from here moving forward, right? So basically the way I'm looking at it is if we can pay off, and just to put it in perspective, we have about 180,000 owing on our mortgage, which is very reasonable because with our income, you know, you've got to minus taxes. Our average cost of living right now is probably 40 or 50,000 a year. You know, we're going to have to, you know, wipe some of that out, but we should realistically be able to bank somewhere between 80, I would presume somewhere between realistically 75 to $100,000, right? So that should mean in about 3 to 5 years, we should easily be able to bank another 3 to 400,000 if things kind of consist of the same way they're going. No guarantee that's going to happen. Obviously things change pretty dramatically quickly, but that's kind of where I'm at, right? Like if we can just, you know, 3 to 5 years, try and bank that 330, and get our portfolio somewhere up to, our portfolio is in a very reasonable place already, but I think if we can pay off the 180 we owe on the mortgage, that would give us another extra 120, 150,000 invested, and we can get our portfolio to a place that's maybe worth about 800,000 to $1 million. That's going to be unlikely in the next 3 years. I'm really, on the cusp of, is that truly possible? Because it really depends on so many factors. Like, is the market going to go in the right direction? I think it's more likely that we would probably be able to get well over $500,000 banked within the next few years between some of the investments we already have. Plus the market kind of goes up like another, 20, 30%. Like, we'll be in a fabulous place, but just getting that mortgage paid off in between, then I can float, right? Because that's why I was telling my mom in 3 years, maybe I can make a meme cat and just live off like making some side money off cat influencing. But that dream is probably going to be short-lived. But I realized that if I can get to that place in 3 years, my portfolio will float itself. And then I can just kind of, do whatever job, and just, we don't really have to rely on a huge amount of income past that point. But I feel like right now is my prime, like where I can make the utmost amount of money. Me and my fiance, if we just keep working hard, a couple 100,000 a year of income isn't that unlikely. We could do that for 3 to 5 years. We've got our mortgage paid off. We're in a really good, healthy place, and the stress goes away, right? But I think, again, you sit down and you plug a bit of math for anybody that's new to this. And again, I can't really give too many of my examples, but let's just say if you were starting out, you're 20 years old, and you can just even put away that $500 a month, or you have $0 starting principal, you're putting away $500 a month, $6,000 a year. And again, you can do that. And again, this is going to be very hard. I don't even think that's enough. I really think most people should be aspiring to put 50 to 60% of their income away when they're in their 20s, which is probably hard as hell, but that's what I did. That's how I got to this position. But let's just say, like I said, back then I was making maybe 40,000 a year. You're not paying a whole lot of tax on that. That's like the lowest income bracket, basically. So let's presume that I was able, living with my parents at the time, being frugal as hell, you're able to put away 50 or 60% of that. So let's say I was banking 20,000 a year, but let's be, generous here and say it was 25. You're able to do that for 10 years at an average market rate of return, which the last decade has been a lot higher than damn near 10%. Not everyone's going to be that blessed. The market's probably still going to grow at a higher rate than average. But even still, that's going to bank you $500,000 by the time you're 30, right? Which is basically where I ended up. That really put me in this situation, because I think by the time I purchased this piece of real estate last year, I had about 450, 500K banked away. So, it really shows you that first decade and the importance of that. So I figure by the time I'm 40, all of my problems should hopefully be resolved. So in the next 3 years, the foundation will have been built. By the time I'm 40, we should be able to fully, comfortably retire, presuming the whole market doesn't go into a complete calamity. But I got to stop stressing. We're going to go on a vacation soon. Even with all this planning, sometimes God likes to throw a wrench in that. And you never really know how crazy it's going to be, right? But this is why, again, I just don't think focusing on these foundational, just Canadian investments, which we have by all metrics. We're very diversified in our portfolio, but we're so tech focused right now. And I'm going to get into some Q&As because I think it's very relevant, because a lot of people have been asking me questions about some of these tech companies. But Macro at Whiteboard Finance talked about Baltic State and their beaches. Pretty interesting. What are you guys getting into here? To be honest, I haven't decided yet. I still have a bit to go. I'm going to travel to a few spots. Oh, man, what are you guys into retirement goals already? I've been watching some videos on Thailand. Looks nice. Yeah, we're going to probably think about doing a Mediterranean cruise. I really want to see Rome, Turkey. That could be fun. That's what we're thinking about, maybe towards spring, summer. Cheaper to live. You guys plan on retiring outside of country? That's also a really good goal too, right? We're trying to live in one of the most expensive cities on the friggin' planet. So I feel like I'm grinding myself into the ground here, stressing out for no reason. When really, we could just sell this property, go to Edmonton, go somewhere like Thailand, and just permanently retire for the next 100 years. What will 3 mil be in 15 years? See, this is the thing though, right? When you have that money invested, I think it's funny because if you go back to maybe even the 2010 timeframe to 2020, money didn't really seem to change all that much with inflation, because inflation at 2% over a 10-year period doesn't make that impactful of a difference. And a lot of people's oh, $1 million isn't a lot of money. It's okay, well, show me your $1 million then. If $1 million's not a lot of money, where's your milli, right? $1 million at 10% a year is $100,000. And I know a lot of people are retiring on a lot less than that, because luckily, at least the government has here in Canada, CPP, right? So you can get some government benefits. I know people that are retiring on a hell of a lot less than, a few $1 million, 2.5 million. But again, you're going to build it up, right? So, I hate when people crap on it, even $1 million, $500,000. $500,000, $1 million is a lot of money. If you got that at a young age, you're pretty much set. What else we got in here? And then I'm going to bounce into some questions on my YouTube stuff. Exactly, Lisa. Even 5 years ago, it wasn't as hard as it is now. Yeah, I think just because of the money printing through the pandemic, which is an unprecedented period. But keep in mind that the Fed is printing, they're destroying some of the dollars, but that's not going to last. I mean, the money supply is going down, but that's not going to last. God knows that never lasts. But again, things are nominalizing, I think. I mean, I've seen grocery prices come down. Ironically, we went to Longo's. If you ever go to Longo's or Whole Foods, that's when you really feel inflation, I think. I wanted to get some crab legs. I've been craving crab legs. So I went to go buy some. And when I saw at Longo's and some of these stores, they were like $39 for just like, whatever kind of crab legs they were. And my jaw kind of hit the floor because I'm like, I can go to an all you can eat place like the Dragon Pearl and for $45 and I can eat all the crab legs I want. I'm like, why would I spend at these crazy expensive food places? Right. I still think you can, things aren't terribly out of control. I keep saying that. I've been arguing with my parents about it. They're like, you don't know what it's like. I'm like, I'm living on my own. I'm buying groceries. Our grocery bill's not static by any metric. But anyways, let me get into some of the Q&As here because I'm going to bleed off into this, crazy recessionary, weird environment, inflationary environment. Tesla's revenues are going up, but their gross net margin is declining, which is ultimately what matters. Yeah. So in this tech kind of bump, I'm looking at these companies that I still think have like some of the best innovations ahead of them. And again, this is things like Meta, Tesla, Google, even though people are crapping on them immensely. And I think this is the ultimate time to be buying these companies because of the market environment, right? I think it's waning on a lot of them. I mean, Google's revenues have only just recovered. Meta's revenues have only just recovered. It's not just like Tesla's the only one going through it. It's just Tesla and Apple are selling these very high margin products. They're very expensive products, right? So people are no longer buying MacBooks for $5,000 a pop. People are no longer going out and buying used cars. This isn't just a Tesla problem, right? Like the entire auto space is seeing like a 30% decline in auto sales since coming out of, I think, 2021, 2022, which I can show you like US auto sales chart. If you take a look at this on Fred, I mean, this gives you a really good idea, right? Like the thing is that Tesla is still the number one selling vehicle, and they've been able to survive this market better than any of these other auto companies in a time where like autos, like as soon as they started raising those interest rates, like auto sales plummeted, right? And they still haven't recovered to post kind of like pandemic levels. Because in the pandemic, all of a sudden, everyone had all this money. They started buying cars like crazy. We hit like record high car sales we haven't seen in a decade. Interest rates started to go up. Boom, just plummeted the entire auto market. So I think this is why the opportunity persists, right? Again, it's speculative in nature. It just depends on where you think these companies are going. But I still think 2025 will be the biggest growth year Tesla's probably going to experience in a while. Just speculating, obviously. So I'm accumulating in a year where people are crapping on it. Let's just see what else we got in here. Hey, what's your thoughts on the Bitcoin ETF? Are they going to explode? Obviously, there's been a lot of institutional money going into the crypto ETFs. That's what's been driving up the space. We're now seeing Dogecoin. I should have speculated on some of these because I was really debating on doing it. Actually, I looked at my wife and I's crypto wallet for the first time because my dad, he's actually been using some of the promotions with ShakePay and some of these Canadian crypto exchanges, and he actually ended up making $50 for free over the last year and a bit. So he's like, I want to cash out. I was like, fine, like cash out. We'll get you your $50 after all those years of you shaking and taking advantage of some of these promotions. So he's going to go spend that $50. But then we looked at our crypto wallet and we're up a good $1,200-1,500, which kind of shocked me a little bit because, like I said, we haven't looked at it forever. We own some Bitcoin and ETH, nothing serious. If the thing goes to the moon, great. I'll sell it. If it goes to zero, I don't give a shit. To me, it's just a pure Ponzi right now. Most crypto is pure Ponzi. So when it comes to these ETFs, I think they're an absolute joke. I think it defeats the entire purpose, and the entire Bitcoin landscape is changing every year. And nobody can tell me what Bitcoin is or what it is for. First, it was a currency, but no one's using it for a currency. A Bitcoin Cash is brilliant, but it's too volatile to use Bitcoin Cash, and nobody's using it for Bitcoin Cash. People are using it as an asset to store like gold. It's digital gold. But then what's the point of it? Anybody can make a better version of digital gold than Bitcoin because, Bitcoin is it's so dumb if it's digital gold. Like it's just sitting there. No one's actually transacting it. There's no purpose behind that. And why would you hold it in an ETF? The whole point is for it to be decentralized. So now it's a centralized asset where big ETF companies have control over it. Like I just don't understand it anymore. I kind of had a better sense of it before, but now it's so just pure Ponzi. If you can't see crypto as a Ponzi or Bitcoin specifically, like I don't know what world you're living in, but the original white paper has nothing to do with what this asset is today. But what ends up happening is because it's the biggest asset class in this space, everybody starts building ecosystems around it because why would you go to a crypto that might be better for gas fees and all this stuff? But the thing is nobody knows about it. No one gives a shit about it. You'll have no market penetration, right? So people are going to build ecosystems around it and do what they can to make it work. But as far as I can tell, people are just hoarding Bitcoin. That's it. That's all they're doing. They're just hoarding a digital currency. Now, what that means in the future, to me, it means pure Ponzi, because that means if everyone starts to sell it, it crashes miserably. And as it did, through the pandemic period after the pump and dump. And now I feel like we're in another pump, right? So we'll see what happens. I'm holding a little bit to gamble because that's what it is. It's a pure speculation. It is the definition of rat crap, according to Charlie Munger, and I don't think he's wrong. But that doesn't mean I don't want to hold some of it, because, you never know where it goes. People will build ecosystems around it. Maybe it stabilizes in the future and it does become some form of a good currency, but you'll never tap it. I mean, you're never going to go walk into a store and tap your phone to trade Bitcoin. You know how long it takes to trade Bitcoin sometimes? I mean, have you ever moved Bitcoin around, like actually? I mean, unless you charge like a huge amount for the miner fees, like I had Bitcoin get locked for like 6 hours and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't moving. And that's because it wouldn't transact because my trade fee was too low. I had to like move it up. I mean, it's so annoying sometimes, right? Like you're kind of playing a little bit of an auction system. Did you ever go over your wife's portfolio? Seems like she's killing it. Curious. She actually is doing so well. It's annoying. Yeah, because I did do an update. Maybe I'll do another one in the future of our combined portfolios. I usually don't show the values. She's a little bit more private than I am, but obviously it's something we have to take into consideration as people that are going to get married. But nonetheless, yeah, we moved all of her assets over to her TFSA. Again, after the real estate purchase come this year, we drained her TFSAs. We're both trying to build them back. And it was so funny because she moved Metastock the day of earnings, the day it jumped 20%. And I mean, it was so great. It was all these tax-free gains. Excuse me. I'll drink here. So she's already up like 20 or 30% on her Meta position since she even moved it to her TFSA. Like she's doing pretty great on a lot of her positions, but we're still building back, right? We got a ways to go. Why is Waymo costing Google billions in losses? And yeah, I think Tesla is still too damn high. 2 points here. Tesla's too high and the Google thing. So the reason that Waymo's costing billions of dollars is for the same reason like Tesla's probably spending billions of dollars on, building out self-driving. Like, I mean, and same with robotics. Like, Tesla has positive income like Google does, but they're not making any of it from these future investments right now. Like Google, you can go rent a Waymo. It's very cheap to get around. But the problem is like those LiDARs, those cars, those systems, like the entire team and building out the software behind it. Like every year it's going to drain billions and billions of dollars. But if it gets solved, it is a $1 trillion industry, like a multi-trillion dollar industry. Whoever solves, and quote me on this, whoever solves self-driving and we start getting to scale, like right now we're in the infancy stage where Google's the only company that has government approval to be doing it. They have hundreds of cars out, nothing crazy. They're now approved in 4 states, but they're not at the level of scale. Like they're just slowly grinding it out and working out the quirks and features and the kinks. And, when somebody does something stupid and throws something at the car, who knows what. But whoever solves this problem, which I think Google and Tesla are the only 2 companies that will, they're going to be worth trillions of dollars. They will surpass Apple. That market cap capability of solving self-driving when it comes to bus drivers, tractor trailers, like I don't think people understand the scope and scale of that. The only other thing I think that can reach that kind of market cap potential is if somebody solves, and I think it's going to come soon, cancers, heart disease. I think medical companies can work their way back into the S&P top 10 because they can extend life, and the value of life extension on every single person that eventually will die from heart disease, cancer. Like there's only a few things that will kill you. If you solve those few things and you have control over that, eventually everyone's going to need you, right? Just like everybody today needs to get around. Like not everybody needs an iPhone, even though iPhones are continuing to take over Android. Like iPhones are still scaling globally. Like they haven't dominated the total market yet. And next in line, I think is what? Like just Android, right? Next to Google. Google owns Android. But the thing is like, like when you get to that scope of these market caps, like there's not going to be a lot of competitors. They're just huge. You just wrap your head around it. Self-driving is a bigger problem, in my opinion, that will generate more revenue and more like market cap capability than an iPhone did. Because look at the cost of a car. Look at the cost of drivers. Look at the cost of taxes. Look at the cost of truck driving. Like you have to pay somebody a salary. Like how big is the entire market cap or just the entire salaries of truck drivers? And you just wipe that one industry out. Then you start wiping Uber out. There's Uber's market cap. And you can just start seeing these market caps get dissolved into a few companies that control the software, right? And then when it comes to Tesla's, value, like if you believe Tesla's going to solve this problem in the next 5 to 10 years, if you believe Tesla's going to have AI robots working in factories, which again, the market cap capability of that is also jaw-droppingly insane. If you think Tesla's going to own, like Apple does, like a huge percentage of the auto market, like Apple owns a huge percentage of the car market, again, it's all speculative. You could be wrong, but Apple or Tesla trading at a 40 times multiple just seems cheap to me. Because I think it could easily triple its business just with solar panels, power walls, and its auto business in the next 10 years. So I think paying a 40 times multiple is fair. I could be wrong. We'll find out. Google AI is an absolute disaster. They put woke agenda above accurate information. Tesla is fighting a price war against China, and Elon is more interested in getting back the share of the company he had before he sold it. Yeah, I mean, these are growing pains for sure. It's so anecdotal and so dumb. I just can't get over the world we're living in now. I remember a day in the age when like the internet used to be the Wild West and people were racist. There were murderers. There were horrible things being posted to the internet. And that's just the way it was. You had to be smart. You had to not get scammed. You had to not get caught up in some kind of scheme. Like you had to have some common sense. Now the world is all caught up because of wokeism. Like who gives a flying crap? Like honestly. It just bothers me so much. That's the world we're in. That's like, can we not just get over racism, guys? Like, are we still in this world of tribalism where, like, come to Canada? Canada, it is, I don't know how you can be racist in a country like Canada. It is the most diverse culture on the planet. Like, I think, like, where I live, I am the minority. Like, most people around where I live are either Chinese, like, they're mostly probably, like, you know, Vietnamese people, Chinese people. I just don't get how, like, racism still exists. Like, I just grew up in such a cultured world that I still can't get over. Wokeism is the dominating conversation of choice. And it took $100 billion off market cap for Google. It's like, who cares? They'll fix it. Like they'll change it. It's just one aspect. Like, come on. The first image it generated was accurate. So it added some diversity to the culture. Ooh, like that's the biggest conversation we're having today when your job is you're going to lose your job. Like there's so much shit happening in life. And that's what we're worried about. You got to love the internet, don't you? It's opening up a buying opportunity because I think these people are idiots. I also think these people that think Google's like going to disappear because of these chatbots and ChatGPT is just going to take Google's market share all of a sudden are idiots. I think they think Google is just somehow replaceable tomorrow, even though these things are just nowhere near the level they need to be at. And they're getting there. And Google arguably has the leading technology still. So 2 bets in the scenario. What about withholding tax and management fees? I think you're talking probably on one of my videos about, buying like US stocks or dividend stocks. It's debatable. You know, RSP, waive the withholding tax, whatever works. Is there withholding tax VS hedging fee scenarios that change? Honestly, I wouldn't even worry about withholding tax. Like, I don't know why people are so concerned. If you want to own good US dividend stocks, buy them in your RSP. Forget about withholding tax. Who cares? You know, you won't have to pay any of it. And if you want to own good growth companies, just buy the S&P 500 in your TFSA or your RSP and don't worry about dividends as much. But even if you're worried about dividends, who cares? If you're buying a US company that you're going to lose 15% on a 5% yield on a great company like Verizon or whatever, like who cares? You lose 15%. The rest of it's tax-free. Unless you're owning it in a non-tax advantaged account, then you're an idiot because you're going to lose a lot of money. But who cares? 15%, whatever. I honestly don't understand why you're discussing these dubious schemes. There are plenty of that's a scam. I think we're getting into the scam comments. So stop waiting. Buy VDY before it pops. VDY will never pop. I'm sorry. The banks might pop. It might go up a little bit, but VDY is never going to explode. It is a income-oriented, traditional kind of stock holding. You know, those companies just don't explode. They grow nicely. There's some of them, like the banks, are still cheap, but relax on exploding. Those are not words that, the popping, exploding, all these words, they don't go with VDY. They don't go with the Canadian economy. Why is there not a roaring 20s? Uber drivers advised me to buy NVIDIA. Yeah, I mean, that's the debate right now. Are we in another kind of over-accumulated speculative phase like we were during 2020? I think yes and no. I think NVIDIA is eventually going to hit a brick wall. I think that's an inevitability. NVIDIA can't be trading at a 50 to 100 times multiple forever. They have to reach parity at some point. The next earnings, if the next earnings are as good as the last earnings have been, it's very likely that they will get up to the market cap of Microsoft and Apple. That's very likely to happen here soon. But the inevitability is that when you're making 70% margins, Apple, you can't tell me that these big tech companies are not working on maybe perhaps trying to find their own chips, or again, you can only build so much compute power, which is what Elon said. Like eventually, like you can't keep scaling at the pace we're scaling. There's going to be parity with the market. You're going to start running into issues like power generation, and it's going to start slowing down the buying of these chips. And then as soon as we get a slowing down or parity with the market, then all of a sudden NVIDIA is not growing at a 50, 100 plus percentage a quarter, right? And then all of a sudden it doesn't justify trading at a 50 to 100 times PE. And then all of a sudden people get scared, they get worried. And then, but that's the ebb and flow of NVIDIA. NVIDIA has always been like that. It's just been the way the industry's been, right? Like you look at their market, look at their stock price. It's always done that with the ebb and flow of technology. What's the next Canadian MFC? I have no idea. Manulife's a great company. This certainly sounds good too, but I think it's still worth considering. Stupid scams, man. There's so many of these. Anyways, I'll bounce into what you guys are talking about here and we'll finish up. It doesn't exist on this level. American media, I would have to think it does, aside from a few idiots out there. What are you guys talking about? Time on self-drive every day. My kids hockey goalie and many tournaments. It hurts the pockets, but it's worth it. Invest in your kids, man. It's good to invest in your kids. Kids are slowing that plan. I think you got to invest in your kids. There's anything wrong with putting a bit. You just got to be in a position, right? Like I think the hardest thing when people have kids is sometimes they end up in a world like this where things get very expensive and they become less malleable. I think I talked about this with like poverty, right? And I'm not saying people have kids that are like poverty. I'm just saying that like you look at people that end up going to school, they get an education they didn't want to get. They're still living with their parents in their 30s and they're stuck in these places like San Francisco or New York or, Toronto here. And what ends up happening is you get stuck because you don't know anything else. You haven't traveled. You're not willing to move somewhere where there's more opportunity, better cost, like better living standard. And then you end up like giving up so much potential because and again, I get family and all this stuff matters, but unfortunately, like Dave Ramsey says, life isn't always fair. And sometimes you just have to suck it up. And if it's too expensive to live where you're living and you can't afford to give your kids a good life, but also make sure you're moving to a good place of retirement, because it's not your kid's job to be responsible for your retirement. Like you need to put yourself in a position, because I always feel so bad for these, and I'm not trying to be racist here, but like Asian families, I've listened to like Reddit stories that are just horrifying to me, where like they make the elder kids support the younger kids and support the family, and they're like reliant on sending money and supporting their whole family, even though they haven't really got ahead. I don't think that should be your kid's responsibility. I think that should purely you should figure your life out, put yourself in a position to make sure you're secure. It doesn't matter if you have to move, whatever you have to do to make it work, because that way you're going to give your kids a better life. Your kids never have to worry about you. And I think it's just a responsible thing to do. Do you sell options in Canada? I should. I don't. Honestly, I'm a real boring investor. A lot of people like to play options. I think it's good to write options. If you're going to buy an option ETF, I think it's better to write your own calls just to collect the premiums on something like VOO or SPY in the S&P 500. But personally, I don't because I'm lazy. I have so much shit going on. I know it's not the hardest thing to do either. I've learned how to do it. I just don't care to do it. I'd rather just put all my money, so I don't have to have cash on the side, and then I can just put it all in the market as much as humanly possible. That makes sense. And then just worry about my job and my income, because I figure everyone sits there and they overanalyze options. And I guess sometimes people 3X and take on a lot of risk when they do it, but I'd rather just focus on my job where I'm making six figures, because I know that's my highest rate of return over doing anything else. I'm selling my house this summer and moving to Panama. Holy shit. I think it was easier to build your net worth 10 years ago compared to now. I agree and I disagree. I think it really depends. Honestly, I mean, if you went back 10 years ago, I mean, companies weren't handing out stock options like they do now. Like I know people that are retired at 35 because, they worked for Netflix or they worked for Shopify or Google, and they were getting $400,000 salaries, including stock options. Like that shit like that never existed 10 years ago, right? But I think it just depends on where you are on the economic, or what is it, the economic, like social scale, the economic, I don't know what the word is for it, because it really sucks. Like if you've never been around the opportunity, or you don't have the skill or the knowledge set to get into a six-figure income, life sucks if you're living in a place like New York, for sure. Like life is just a crap hole. Like you're fighting to stay alive, for sure. But I think honestly, this is like one of those weirdest times where it's like the hardest time to make money and the easiest time. Because if you can just pick up your cell phone and make a video of your cat, you're making six figures a year. Like I'm telling you, following these cat influencers that are making 50 to 100K plus a year, And, you couldn't do that 10 years ago. Like, that was just not something that ever existed. So I really think it's just your perspective. I've always been a glass half full kind of a guy. And me and my old business partner still kind of reminisce on this, that like, I would look at people that are struggling and they don't want to listen to me, because kids never want to listen. You have to figure it out for yourself. Because I try and tell these younger people, like, if you just did this and this, you can be making a lot of money, but they never want to do this or this. They want to figure it out for themselves. And I think people that are in a position of power and income, and they understand like the business they're in, it's easy to tell somebody else what to do because they're doing it for themselves. But that's why I think you should always be a glass half full. Like if you think the world is crap and it's impossible to make real money today, you're never going to make real money, because you're never going to look for it. But if you think there's real opportunity out there, like I do with all these AI software, if you're a sales rep today, if you can pick up and do social media, get into sales, I mean, there's so much opportunity. And if you get that glass half full kind of mindset, you're going to see all these opportunities. You're going to have all these side hustles. You go out and get a real job and a side hustle like I have. And before you know it, you're making a lot of money real quick. And then if you're malleable and you move somewhere affordable and you have like more online focused businesses, or you get into starting construction businesses, or you get into, getting paid to learn to do electrician work, huge opportunities that still exist out there. So again, try and be glass half full. I wish I had your savings rate. That's impressive. I lived like I was broke though. I argued with a financial advisor about this because he says I was going to have a mental breakdown at some point because of the way I was functioning mentally. Because he's like, nobody can live like they're broke to try and like retire super early. But I honestly think, again, you don't have to do what I'm doing. I don't think anybody has to do what I'm doing. I grew up seeing shit. Like I grew up seeing my friends commit suicide. I grew up seeing what drugs do in well, not necessarily real poverty, but I've just seen what crappy low income environments do to people. And at a very young age, like I quickly realized like that is not, I think when I was probably around the time my buddy committed suicide, like I had this crazy, like just mindset of like, I'm never going to be broke. Like I didn't care what it would take. Like I started a business really young and I was just like, I can't have this kind of life. Like I never want to be around this stuff. And I knew money could solve that problem. So, I mean, that's where a lot of my motivation came from. So I realized that it's not about how much money you make, it's how much you save. And if you can save 60% of your income, you can retire in about 10 to 15 years. So I just basically realized that I'm going to be living on my parents' couch, living on my friends' couches. And I did that pretty much for a good 8 to 10 years. And I was blessed that I had family that let me do it. And, I bounced from my parents' couch, my friends' couches, to like my fiance's parents. I lived with when I started living with my fiance's parents, that's when I kind of had that rude awakening that like, I want to live on my own. Like, I don't want to be, it's just weirder when you're living with your fiance's parents. So I was like, we need to buy a place. Like, I can't keep doing this. Like we have enough money saved up. Like it's starting to make sense at that time. But again, you don't have to live like that. Like you can live a normal life and just try and project out retirement 30 or 40 years. You don't have to retire in 10 years because obviously you have to do that prison sentence, right? You kind of got to really realize that if you want to be rich young, like you're going to have to give up 10 or 15 years. Then when I mean give up luxury. Like you're no longer going to be driving nice cars. You're not going to be doing partying and all this stuff. But again, I was in the entertainment industry, so I got to still kind of party and work at the same time, at least get paid to work, which was cool. I mean, it was a good way to live through my 20s and save a lot of money, work weekends and stuff like that. But that's what you have to do, man. Go work 2 or 3 jobs, give up the first 10 years of your life from 20 to 30, and then you'd be in my position, right? Where, hopefully you meet somebody nice, a nice woman comes into your life, or a nice man. You both have the same mindset. You both have saved up money. You put good savings over a decade away, and boom. The rest of your 30s is just basically fast tracking the rest of your retirement. Palantir, yes or no? Yes and no. I don't understand Palantir enough because honestly, I don't trust Alex Karp that much. I watch a lot of his stuff and he just doesn't come off as much of a genuine person. And I don't understand their business model or like how they're constantly innovating and having to make new stuff all the time. And software businesses at that level, at that scale, when they have so many software businesses, it's like looking at Constellation Software. Like I just don't understand them at all. I think it's expensive today. I think at $10 to $15, it was a good buying opportunity. At $5, it was a steal from a valuation standpoint, but I just don't understand it at all. I think it's changing too rapidly, and they could keep doing very well. I mean, there's no reason they won't do well. It's just not a company that I'm willing to buy. Like I said, I look at a company like Tesla. I've been up and down the auto industry. I've been studying it. I held it since 2019. I get it. I get where they're going. I can understand it better. I can understand companies like banks better. I can understand Google better. I mean, Google, you got Gmail, Google Search, you got Waymo and self-driving. I mean, there's so much integrity to Google's businesses that have built into the economy that I understand it, but I don't understand why governments are using Palantir over some other person's software. Like, I don't understand what makes their software so unique that somebody else can't do it at a cheaper price and start kind of competing with them. I don't think you're going to compete with Gmail. Like, I don't think you're going to compete with, YouTube. I just don't. So I feel like those are better buying opportunities at better values today. But again, I could be wrong. I mean, Palantir is a cheap company. If it keeps growing and keeps doing what they're doing, they could be, in a really good place. And fate money and not a Ponzi, fiat money. No, I don't think, I think the way the entire capitalism, like all money is just fugazi at the end of the day, right? If we're talking about, if you guys are getting into the Bitcoin thing. But the difference is like Bitcoin isn't money. That's the dumb thing. Like, you can't compare fiat money to Bitcoin because Bitcoin isn't a freaking currency. Nobody is using it as a currency. This is why I lose my mind. Every time I argue with the Bitcoiners about Bitcoin, it's just a complete waste of air having a conversation about it because Bitcoin isn't a currency. Nobody is using it as a currency. It's too volatile. They're using it as an asset that is only going up because other people are buying it. And it's the same thing with money, but money is backed by a government and a superpower in businesses like Apple, and every country on the planet wants to own US dollars. And at the end of the day, you're going to sell your Bitcoin for US dollars to inevitably transfer it into another thing or buy something with it. You're not going to walk into a store and do a transaction with Bitcoin unless you're going to convert it to Bitcoin Cash, at which you're going to transfer it to US dollars on a Visa, like a prepaid Visa of something. Like, I mean, it's not a currency. No one's using it as a currency. Calm down. Like, it's just a speculative Ponzi asset. You cannot tell me Bitcoin is not a Ponzi. It is only going up because other people are buying it, not because they're using it. People use currency. It is a current. It flows, cash flow. Nobody is holding or stacking dollars, my friend. Nobody is getting paid and holding on to it and stocking it under their mattress. They're buying businesses. They are investing it. They're buying real estate. It flows. Crypto sits in a wallet where you pray to God to get rich because other people are buying it. That is what crypto is. It is the definition, Bitcoin specifically, as a Ponzi scheme as it stands today. It could change. There could be ecosystems that come into fruition where it becomes a stabilized currency in the future, but that is not what's happening here. NFTs have real value, my friend. Crypto can be based into video games where it'll have real value, smart contracts, all this beautiful stuff, but none of it exists today, and Bitcoin is going up for some reason. So don't tell me it's not a Ponzi, because it's a true Ponzi, and US dollars are not the same thing. If the landlord and grocery store don't accept it, I have no need for it. Again, I own Bitcoin. I'm not against Bitcoin. I'm just stating the fact. Like, people just don't want to look at it for what it is. Isn't gold also a Ponzi scheme? Yes. Gold is another weird asset because you can't print more gold, but you can. I mean, India discovered $1 trillion worth of gold assets. You just got to mine it. I mean, you can't tell me every single government couldn't incentivize people to go mine more gold and crash the gold market. Gold is so paper manipulated. Gold is the same crap. You just buy it. That's why here I go again, because I own gold. Like, I own gold, I own silver, I own Bitcoin. I like owning all these different assets, but I only own a little bit of them because I don't like them. I believe being totally diversified is owning all these different asset classes. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to own a lot of something that sits there and doesn't produce anything. It has to produce something. That's how you get rich. I mean, or you're speculating, right? I mean, Bitcoin is speculation. I'm speculating on it. Because like I said, you just got to be understanding what they are in the current economic circumstance. I mean, if Bitcoin was going up and I was going out and using it, because I've tried to accept invoices with it. Like, I had my Bitcoin wallet on my invoice. Guess what? In the last 2 years of me doing business, not one person has ever paid me in crypto. And I've tried. Trust me, I've tried. Like, this is not what they're using it for. Chad, have you bought anything with it? You can buy stuff with Bitcoin. I'm not saying you can't. Go use Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash is brilliant. If you go to another country, this is another thing too, right? Like I think Bitcoin has like good liquidity. I mean, you can go anywhere in the world with it. It is a very secure asset, and I can transfer it to Bitcoin Cash, and then I can buy things with it. I get that aspect of it. However, I don't think the vast majority of people buying Bitcoin are using it for that reason. I mean, that's why Bitcoin crashed. So you look at the massive amount of value crypto and Bitcoin lost. That was from the Ponzi pump and dump. Now, what's happening again? Is it because of people using Bitcoin? No, it's because of another Ponzi pump, because an ETF and a halvening event. I don't hear anybody saying Bitcoin's going up because people are using it. You know that's not the case. Like what? Not arguing, generally curious. There is good, like I said, you can use Bitcoin. There's ways to use it. It's just very volatile. Again, you could you look at the price today and you go to buy something with it, and the price could drop dramatically before you pay for it, and all of a sudden you owe them more money. Like if you're buying a car with it, like it's so volatile. It needs to level off before it'll ever have any real currency value. Currencies need to be stable. You all need to do some research on blockchain technology. I've done research. I've done all the research. You read the white paper. Bitcoin's been around forever, but I'm just saying Bitcoin in and of itself is one thing. Cryptocurrency is another thing. Like I said, NFTs, smart contracts. I mean, we're eventually going to be using real estate for smart contracts. Eventually, all closing houses to deal with the back end of the stock market will be done through cryptocurrencies. Like that makes a lot of sense. But guess what? That's not Bitcoin. Like that's not anything we're using today for cryptocurrency. And again, like my bullish thesis was the next bull run in crypto was going to be because video games were going to fully implement NFTs correctly and have on and off exchanges of things that are useless today. I mean, think about all the skins and all the billions of dollars people pumped into Fortnite, and it was a waste of time. As soon as you turn the game off, it's over. But if I can pull all those out as tradable NFTs and Disney does a drop or an event like they did with Fortnite, you know the value of those NFTs? You could trade them. You could start using them for smart contracts with real estate conversion deals. I mean, there's so many flaws in the current transaction system where crypto will definitely help solve those issues, but that's not Bitcoin. So just separate those conversations and make sure you understand what you're looking at and what you're talking about. Because I think people just generalize the whole cryptocurrency space. I think crypto is going to be huge. It'll be neat. Only had 10 tries. 2 left before my hard drive. Oh no, you're one of those. Oh no. I'd laugh so hard. Isn't there a guy who got paid 10 years back? Yeah, there's a lot of stories, right? There's always going to be those stories. I mean, it's what happens when you buy, decentralized assets where people scam and get ripped off. You know what's going to destroy crypto one day? Hear me out on this. How do you think BlackRock, how do you think Vanguard, and Vanguard doesn't want anything to do with it, but BlackRock and these other ETF exchanges, how do you think they're going to manage if they get hacked? Because the only way they're buying it is the same way you or I are buying it, which means that there is a level of risk. And with that level of risk, if one employee, like who controls the keys to that $100 billion+ wallet? Like there's been hundreds of billions of dollars of inflow because of these ETFs. Who owns that wallet? Because it's not like a secured, like, the way Wealth Simple here in Canada, they like insure their wallet. Like they insure it. They have insurance policies against it in case they get hacked. But I'm just saying, like, what stops one employee from just like, I'm going to leak these to somebody in China or some friend I have overseas, and we're just going to, offload $100 billion worth of this ETF's cryptocurrencies. Like that will be the day that like people lose their effing minds. You want to see a pure collapse? I mean, it was bad when, it would be just as bad as when, all these FTX went under. That would be the next FTX, right? If one of these major exchanges got hacked, and they could just easily, right? And again, this is why I like stocks, because at least if stocks get hacked, like you can't really take my ownership away. You have to sell them. It takes days to close. You have to get into my accounts, which are backed up. Like it's so much harder, I think, to like get control of someone's like stock portfolio than it is a crypto wallet. If I own my own crypto wallet and I hide my keys, I'm the only one that knows about it. But if BlackRock's controlling my crypto wallet, I don't know what the F they're doing with those keys, but they sure as hell better have them locked. And what happens if there's so many things that could go wrong. Oh God, it's scary to think about. Coinbase holds most of the major ETFs, Bitcoin. Okay, that's a good point. That's something to look into. It's a fun conversation to be had. Who's controlling this and is it safe? I mean, I probably could trust Coinbase, but baby, there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of trust. Anyways, folks, I've kind of gone off topic. One day, maybe I'll be living my dream, and when I quit YouTube and doing this finance stuff because my brain has a final meltdown, or I've reached my financial goals, because this channel is only as relevant, in my opinion, as my financial goals are, because it's the whole reason I started this YouTube channel. And when I kind of reach those goals, I'm probably going to quit doing this. And if I'm lucky and AI hasn't taken over the pet, sector, I'm going to be making some kitty memes. That's going to be my retirement dream. So live on, stay cool, stay diligent, folks. And I love the balloons because I don't know what the hell StreamYard's doing, but peace.